This video is not for whales and dolphins. It's for you, because you are just like me. Average Duck Gamer here, and I have to say that new ambush mode is pretty fun, but it was kind of tricky at points. So what I'm going to do is talk you through my 5 tips. I said tips for clearing it easily without needing Caesar. And following that, we'll talk about teams, and then I'll show my clear footage and talk you through why I made certain decisions in the moment, keeping it in line with those 5 tips. So if you're finding it tricky, you're in the right place. And if you found it easy, then let me know what I missed down below. It really does feel like this has been added to demonstrate the effectiveness of Caesar with these aggressive enemies and small stun windows. But I can assure you that Caesar isn't necessary, and we'll talk about teams after the general combat tips. And remember, I probably suck at the game. Okay, tip 1, be patient. Don't stick out long animations. Don't be greedy. Remember, it's better to keep your health than to greed extra hits at the expense of damage, because those enemies hit really hard. Tip number 2, abuse your EX special attack invulnerability. Remember that your EX special attack grants some temporary invulnerability. This is useful on most characters, but super useful on characters with longer EX special attacks, like Nicole, to give yourself a bit of breathing room. Tip number 3, try to keep both enemies on camera, as it will help with anticipating their attacks. I say both because on the hardest level, it's 2 enemies per side. Now, if you lose track and one slips out of view, just be super aware of the sound cues to help you know when they're going to attack so that you can dodge. Moving on, tip number 4, focus on one enemy at a time, particularly on the very last stage. You want to burst one enemy down, and then you can focus on the other. Now, if you are going for clear times, then you won't want to waste stun windows, but if you're just going for the S rank, sometimes it's safer to use the stun that you just got off on character A to finish off character B, because it will make the rest of the fight way easier. And lastly, tip number 5. Remember that the S rank condition is not having characters die. Don't be afraid to switch in suboptimal characters in terms of clear time in order to make sure that your characters that are low don't die, because as long as you manage to clear, it's all good. So in terms of team then, we'll only really discuss the hardest difficulty, 5th Frontier, because I think that's the only one that wasn't just steamrolled by my teams, that are only really built probably about as well as the average player's teams. Okay, so first half I would say felt easier because the doppelganger here seemed less aggressive, but it's tighter here in terms of the resistance, as it includes Ether, which means that if you have Ju-Yuan team, you are going to want to run her on the second side, as I did. In terms of teams for this first side, I originally cleared with a Jane Doe team, and it was shockingly easy because Jane doesn't lose as much damage output from needing to dodge as Piper does. But as you can see, it's totally clearable though with Piper, as she is the on-field anomaly driver, and that's the footage I'll show, as it's more interesting than Jane just destroying it. But I did use that footage earlier in the video if you want to see. So anomaly teams definitely work, and I think this is the same across both sides, as the weaknesses are the same. But I would say Soldier 11 would be a good fit here too, particularly if you also had Khalida. You could also run a Nekomata or Korean or Billy team too, and all of those would work across both sides. Just ensure that you have a team that is built around them, so that either your fire or physical character can shine. For example, I'm using Piper with an anomaly buffer and an attack buffer so she can make the most of her time. And don't be worried about using A-ranks. They certainly can work. So talking more specifically about the second side now then, I'll definitely make sure that you put your stronger team here. As I mentioned, this one does feel harder. I don't think it's crazy to assume that most players would have at least one S rank that they have a solid team around, even if it's a standard character like Soldier 11 or Nekomata, or a limited character like Ju-Yuan or Jane Doe, or anything other than Ella. I'm sure you'll have a team built for them, and you'll want to run that one here, your most well-built team. The first half was easier to clear with the A ranks, let me put it that way. And on that note, just a quick look at my characters. There's nothing too cracked here. My Piper and supports are only level 50 with correct main stat drive discs, but substats certainly still need work. And this is the same across both my teams, except Ju-Yuan is level 60. And again, I don't think that's a crazy assumption that you'd have one S rank agent leveled up to 60 with a solid team around them. Before we see the clear and talk it through, this is your reminder though that you probably aren't subscribed. Did you know that liking and subscribing really helps out small creators like me? You did? Well, better hop to it then. Thanks for all the support though, guys. I really do appreciate it. Also, join the Discord. Right, onto the footage. Remember, I suck at the game, but I did get it done and S ranked. Okay, so we're onto the footage then. And we're going to start off here with Piper, and immediately as we enter the arena, we're going to go left instead of going straight into the middle, because as that guy drops down, he will hurt you. Now you can see here, I'm trying to keep them both on screen at the same time. And I'm also immediately trying to get my buff up on Piper. And by buff, I mean shield. Because not only is that shield really good for the anomaly proficiency buff that Seth provides, but it also really helps Piper to eat a hit or two, particularly while she's doing this, spinning. because that animation is pretty long and she kind of gets stuck in it sometimes. And she does gain some interruption resistance and stuff while she's in there, obviously, but it doesn't stop her from taking quite a bit of damage. And as you can see, her shield has already been eaten. And then we get the shield back up, and then we ult. Mostly we're just using ult on cooldown, like as soon as it comes back up, simply because we don't want to waste that ability. And really here with these two, I'm not looking at the stun window as my opportunity to deal damage, even though he is now stunned. I'm kind of just thinking about trying to deal as much anomaly damage as possible and ignoring stun windows, basically. And that kind of makes it easier to manage the two of them. As you can see as well, like we talked about in the tips, I'm very much focusing on the big robot right now as opposed to the doppelganger. And also we're trying to get behind him so that those hits, as he kind of swings those big arms of his around, we have an opportunity to not get hit as we kind of rotate around him with Piper. And now we're desperately trying to get this guy taken care of and continue to keep that shield up on Piper as much as we can. And you can see that she just ate a huge hit with it. So we go back to Piper to get Seth to bring it back up for us again. And if you are going to play an anomaly team like this, you really do need to be keeping an eye on your assist points down in the bottom left there to make sure that you don't run out. And then we get another stun off on him here. A little bit of support from Lucy. I think I actually failed to get the proper stun here. Yeah, that's a bit of a mistake. Huge mistake, really, because that could have finished him off. But we do have the ult to finish him. Which it didn't need, by the way. I just did it because I wanted to make sure. And remember, the win condition is clearing. The win condition is clearing without dying. And that's what we go for. Get some buffs up. Now, Piper's pretty low, so I'm a little bit worried about her, but then we get it into the stun window here, which means that she's not going to move for a second, so then we're safe to on-field Piper again, do as much damage as we can. Success. And Seth finished her off for us. Then we move on to the second half. Now here it was better, on the first hide, it was definitely better to focus on the big guy, the big robot guy. But here, I would say this is like my third attempt, and the first two attempts I tried focusing on the big guy again, and I kind of struggled with it. But as soon as I switched my focus and I started focusing on the doppelganger, it was substantially easier. And I think this is my first time where I actually tried just focusing on the doppelganger and just playing off of sound for that big guy as he keeps coming in. You can see that I'm not even that worried about the fact that he's not on screen for me at the moment. Not really that concerned about it because I'm comfortable playing off the sound. And by comfortable, I mean, I take a hit here and there, and that's okay. We just managed to squeeze the ult there into the stun window, which is good, but ultimately we could have done a lot better with that stun window than we actually did. But remember, again, it's about clearing and not necessarily, and by clearing I mean clearing without dying, and not necessarily about how much damage you can output in the shortest time as possible. Obviously there will be people who do want to play for clear times and stuff, but that's not what we're going for here. And you can see now though that I'm really focusing on the doppelganger as opposed to the big guy. I mean, I get a little bit distracted there, but I'm really locked on, and even when it tried to interrupt me, I had already locked on to that guy. I was quite slow there in terms of the way I processed that stun, by the way, and that's because I was just trying to see if this guy had already died, and now I want to go and check to make sure that he is dead, because there'd be nothing worse than thinking that he's dead and he's actually not. So now this leaves me completely free to focus on the big guy, and as you can see, it's a lot easier to handle him now until I inevitably make a mistake. but a lot easier to dodge around, of course. Yeah, much easier to dodge around now that it's just him. And we get him back into stun state. I messed up the start of the stun window a little bit. But we do have ult again, and his stun window is substantially longer, so then we can EX special attack, we can get Nicole's up again, and then we can ult. Nice. Yeah, so other than the start of the stun window there, it was pretty good. And again, finding it relatively easy to dodge around at this point. But I do, in a moment, I think, take a couple of hits on Ambi. Yeah, there's one there, and there's another. So at this point, it's important to mention that, as per one of the tips, you don't want to leave a character on field if they're in danger. So right now, Nicole's got a bunch of health, so you can see that I'm just messing around with Nicole. And Juyuan can also take a hit, because both Nicole and Juyuan, they can both take a hit. Nicole has more health, yeah, but they could both take a hit if they needed to, whereas Ambi takes one more, and that's it. GG's, game over. So we just need to try and be safe, essentially. And then we get into this stun window, and now I'm trying to unload as much as I can, essentially. Do we get to an ult? We do? Go on, then. Don't quite manage to get him in the stun window, no. And that's okay. Again, just being very careful about bringing Ambi on field, so I'm kind of switching backwards and forwards between Juyuan and Nicole, just to do the last bit of extra damage. And success. Woot. As you can see though, that time doesn't add up with what you just saw, because originally I cleared with Jane and then Juyuan, as I've already mentioned, but I kind of wanted to prove that I could also do it with Piper. Lastly then, let me know down below how you're getting on with the new ambush node. It certainly does feel like it was intended to push people towards picking up Caesar, but I have to say, I'm a little shocked that it wasn't tougher. As always, pull responsibly and remember to like and subscribe for better than average luck on your pulls. Bye bye bye.